Exciting day today. I feel really lucky to be joined by an awesome panel of individuals. We'll be here for the next hour or so, maybe a little bit shorter, but we're basically going to be going over two kind of larger topics. One of those is going to be multicast and kind of its applications to blockchain as an acceleration technology, and kind of talk through how DoubleZero Edge is using that. And then kind of dive into the product itself, talk about the launch today and kind of different aspects of DoubleZero Edge. But before we do that, my name's Eden. I'm head of communications here at DoubleZero. We'll be moderating the panel today. And yeah, again, I'm joined by a great group of people. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to have them introduce themselves. I'm sure you know many of the faces already on the call, but Austin, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. I'm Austin. I am one of the three co-founders of DoubleZero and run things over at the foundation. And then over to Andrew.
Hi, Andrew McConnell. I'm also one of the three co-founders of DoubleZero. I'm the CTO of Malbec Labs, the engineering team that's the core development team for DoubleZero.
Tom?
Hey, everyone. Tom Warner, head of business development here at DoubleZero. Excited to chat. Brian?
Hey, how are you? Ryan Long with Triton One, one of the community members and a very active and engaged participant with DoubleZero.
Hey everybody, my name is Roger Wattenhofer. I'm head of research at ANSA.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you guys so much for taking the time. I know you're all very busy people, so just appreciate you taking an hour outside of your day to join us. I kind of want to start here by taking us like a year back in the past. Accelerate is coming up here in Miami in a couple of weeks. This time last year it was hosted in New York. Roger, you were on stage talking kind of all about Alpenglow and Rotor. And within that conversation, you mentioned kind of multicast being a potential acceleration technology for Rotor and kind of, you know, the Solana architecture in general. So I wanted to kind of just ask you to maybe just talk a little bit more about that. You know, how do you kind of see multicast fitting into the picture? And I think, you know, we can kind of dive into what is multicast in general with a couple other people too.
Sure. You know, I've been a professor for many years, so I taught this stuff actually. So multicast is just a communication primitive where one single sender to multiple nodes, to many nodes, many receivers. It's a quite old idea. And as I mentioned last year in the Solana, in the new update in Alpenglow, we kind of use only multicast actually. That's the only communication primitive we need to use. We needed to disseminate the transactions quickly. And we also needed to send votes around. But every communication we do is always from one node to every other node, basically. So we don't need any unicast or anycast or even gossip anymore. So in that sense, that's why I dropped this line last year, because it's very well suited, I guess, if you have a good multicast implementation.
Yeah, so I guess like right now we're kind of working in a unicast environment, and I'd just be curious to know kind of like what difficulties or problems that brings in terms of data propagation on Solana specifically. So I don't know if Austin.
Yeah, I can take this again.
Here.
Maybe Austin. Yeah. No, go Austin.
Go for it.
I mean, whenever we only have unicast, right, which is basically what we have in the internet right now, we have to simulate multicast somehow. So we have to use protocols, simulate multicast. Mm-hmm. Right now we're using Turbine. In the future we're going to use Rotor. Other protocols use, other blockchain protocols use some sort of gossip, or even the leader does all the work. But at the base of it is really multicast, right? So that's sort of like everything is multicast, so to speak, when you look at blockchains, because that's the only thing that you really need, where one node has to send the information to everybody else in the system. So yeah, this makes it exciting.
Yeah, I want to kind of ask Andrew like a follow-on question to this, just because like obviously this technology has been used in finance for decades at this point, and the question becomes, like, if we're trying to build the equivalent of multicast with all these different solutions, why has this not been done before? Like, why haven't we brought multicast to blockchain before?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is pretty simple, because while it is just a communications primitive, as Roger points out, it's not a primitive that's supported on the public internet. So typically, multicast requires a centralized network with a centralized control plane that can coordinate the multicast trees being built across like a wide area network. And the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, who writes the protocols that sort of underpin the internet, they've tried really hard over the years to try to make it easy to coordinate across all the different network operators on the public internet and make multicast reliable. They never really succeeded. And so there's sort of like a lost, there's no way to do it on the public internet. There's private MPLS services that support it. There's other, like, you go to a carrier, you can buy a multicast service, but that's sort of antithetical to the idea of blockchains being able to be all over the world and using the internet to connect it. And that's where I think DoubleZero comes in, is we've solved the coordination problem. So we have the same decentralized network contributor community that the public internet has, but we've used a blockchain that we call the DoubleZero ledger to coordinate the protocols so that multicast can be actually deployed on a global scale across across what appears to be a singular network, but it's actually operated by multiple entities. So that's really the novel part here, is that we're able to use an existing protocol, an existing primitive that has existed for many years. It's used on local area networks and it's used in central networks, but we've solved the way to do this across a decentralized infrastructure.
And then maybe even adding on to that as well, the evolution of blockchains in general, where previously on slower chains kind of maybe didn't matter so much, right? Like Ethereum works okay on the public internet. You've got 12-second block times. Milliseconds matter, but maybe not quite as much. And here, where we're at with Solana, and even the evolution of Solana from 6 years ago to today, we've made so much progress that today milliseconds matter. And so DoubleZero is just that logical next step in the evolution. It's I think it's important in that context that blockchains are maturing and we need new tools. So.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. And it's kind of like the whole ethos of like our approach to infrastructure, right? Is to build infrastructure that's like using proven technologies of finance, but kind of making those more accessible in a permissionless way, all kind of underpinned by DoubleZero's network. So yeah, I think totally said this before, that trading is kind of the most important use case for public permissionless blockchains. And like, if that truly is the case, then you're exactly right. We have to be thinking about milliseconds, microseconds even, to actually like have technology that's on par with traditional trading environments. So yeah, all great points. Tom, I don't know if you have anything to add there too.
Yeah, I'll say this, like if crypto systems are going to compete with centralized exchanges for liquidity and be the 24/7 venue for trading, as we all in this chat, I believe, want it to be, we need to get better than centralized systems. So like the New York Stock Exchange is very, very good because they do two things really well, which is attract liquidity and have excellent connectivity. So you know how long it takes to do a trade, and you know how long it takes to get data out of that system and analyze it. When you have a geographically distributed blockchain where every validator is the exchange floor for a few seconds, you get this really fractured experience as a trader, where sometimes I get data fast, sometimes I get it slow, sometimes I don't get it at all. And how are we going to ask the world's largest capital deployers to leave a system they love and come to this distributed system? Because why? So I believe that Edge is sort of the first step into optimizing market data out of a blockchain, but it is a collective group of people that are building this vision of internet capital markets or just fully on-chain tokenized assets. So I'm excited to see how, like, what teams will do with this incremental speed. In a lot of ways, DoubleZero provides a solution for somebody to go build something with. So I'm excited to see what comes out of this.
Yeah, me too. Before we move on, go ahead, Roger.
Is it even true that this is, in some sense, the first worldwide multicast service which is open? Like, would you say this is actually the first? Like, some, you mentioned some others, but they're usually sort of closed, right? Is this more than just new for blockchains, but actually new for the world in some sense?
We think so. I'm not aware of any others that are doing it. I mean, I don't want to, overstate it, but certainly I think it's the first one that I'm aware of. Yes.
Yeah. And one of the cool pieces about this is permissionless receiving of shreds is over multicast is certainly interesting and innovative in its own right, that you don't have to go sign a contract with someone and provision connectivity. You can just permissionlessly pay on chain and start receiving the output of a multicast group. But because Solana staked validators are in Gossip, so there is actually a canonical system that the DoubleZero network can just read and can say, okay, you're a staked validator, you're building blocks on the Solana network, great, you're provisioned to connect in on the validator side, and you're provisioned already to be able to send data into the multicast group as well. This is one of the really cool components about that is, like, yes, permissionless consumption of the data is really cool, but permissionless contribution of the data, because these are public blockchains and we can just read the blockchain and pull the validator identities, is also a very cool component, which also would not work without public-private key cryptography. Like, all of this goes back to that handshake of cryptography that blockchain is built on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if this is like the first application of like an open multicast scenario, then like what does that mean for the future of this technology as it relates to blockchain? Like, could there be a world in which Solana consensus is happening via multicast? I know this is like kind of a thought experiment, but it's a question we've been asked too. So I just kind of wanted to think it through with the group.
The answer is yes, and even thinking about the future and like where the blockchain can go and where DoubleZero can help, takes me back to a conversation we were having in Discord with other validators back in the testnet days, pre-mainnet, and we were talking through scenarios of denial of service attacks on individual validators. So if you saturate their network line, then it's hard to form consensus. But if each of the validators had a separate network card attached to a private network, then what would happen is we could continue to always perform consensus, and then the blockchain wouldn't be down even if an individual validator was having a problem with a saturated public link. And so just starting to think about ideas of redundancy will lead to robustness and reliability for the blockchain. And obviously features we don't have yet today, but would be a really cool place if we can get there.
Yeah, I think to like kind of summarize this point, this is something we included in our thread today. Essentially, like, legacy systems offer multicast, but they're closed. And then the public internet is open, but it can't support multicast. So kind of DoubleZero is this unique innovation that allows both to exist at the same time. So I think it's kind of a good summary of the idea. So obviously we launched Edge today, which is incredibly exciting for the team. I want to kind of just dive into what that is, the product itself, how we're utilizing multicast to kind of accelerate data propagation of shreds, specifically to start. So I don't know, Tom, if you want to kind of just dive into like, what is the, why do we need faster shreds, delivered over multicast? Why would a trader need this?
Yeah. So maybe step back from a crypto system generally and just put yourself in the mindset of someone who's trading. The action typically looks like you're getting information to your desk or wherever you're trading. You analyze that information and generate some form of alpha, and then you execute on it. If you look at the progression of the DoubleZero network, we started on the execution side, which is to say sending messages from an RPC to a validator. So when we launched DoubleZero, our first focus was on going out and building a large footprint of validators to effectively receive transactions over the DoubleZero network. But along that road, we also realized that there is a tremendous amount of demand for data coming out of those validators. So from a trading perspective, and really what we're trying to do is remove this like fractured and unequitable experience that certain market participants have on Solana. So if you're near a very large staked validator, if you are a large staked validator or you have a commercial relationship with a bunch of other validators, then you're sort of in this club, so to speak, of people that can access shreds. And shreds really just reflect, I like to joke, they're kind of a receipt of what had just transacted, but this is, in a way, the most up-to-date information you can get on a block. Now, no market can be fully mature or respond to all of the things that are happening if market participants have a fractured experience of what is happening. So when you think about traders on DoubleZero Edge, really what we're trying to do is aggregate information that is happening on chain and then distribute it very fast. So the aggregation is a function of the footprint of validators we have on DoubleZero at the moment. So we converted what we'll call IBRL mode validators. That first use case where validators were connected to DoubleZero in the receiving capacity, and we work with them to begin publishing their shreds. What that meant is we have a very wide footprint of validator leaders that can publish their shreds. And then we leverage multicast, which we talked about here, as a means for distributing that information fast. Getting a lot of shreds is in and of itself not super helpful if you can't deliver them. And delivering them really fast is not helpful if you don't have a lot of information that you're delivering. So to your original question, Eden, like the reason I think this will resonate with traders is for the first time, really, you can get a very fast signal of what is happening on chain and use that as information to trade on or conduct market activity. Now, I leave it somewhat vague on what you're doing because every use case is a little bit different. If you're a market maker, if you're a prop trader, if you're running a prop AMM, if you're doing more research-based stuff, whatever your particular use case might be, I don't know how you're going to use this information down to your specific company's mission, but what I can say is collectively everybody can benefit from faster and better insight into what just happened.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I realized I asked you like the why and the what before, or the why before I asked the what. And so I don't know if maybe Austin or someone else on the call wants to kind of walk through like what is DoubleZero Edge and like how do we put this into the minds of individuals to kind of understand what we're actually building here.
Yeah, so DoubleZero Edge, you can think of it as like a platform technology built on top of the core DoubleZero network. So this is utilizing all of the same technology and all the same fiber links, all the same core technology we've built for the DoubleZero, adding this sort of data distribution platform on top of it. And so this means that it's a multicast group. That means it's tied into the ability to read Solana gossip, as we were talking about before. There's a payment system integrated in it. And this is really bringing together a lot of different primitives that the engineers and the team have built out over the last year to support the core network. So this allows basically for everything from, custom multicast groups, on-chain payment subscriptions, all these things, they come together in the DoubleZero Edge product. And the nice thing about this can support all different types of data feeds as well, whether that is equities data, commodities data, other types of blockchain data, other types of multicast feeds other than shreds potentially could be distributed over this as well, whether that is sort of, you could call it almost the pre-confirmation systems from block building engines, or when we get to a world of MCP and constellations, the feeds coming from the proposers and the attesters. There's lots of different ways that this data platform technology can be applied. Shreds for Solana are just the first one and a great, awesome use case for it. And it's something we got a lot of initial demand for. And so that's kind of where we decided to continue building this as a Solana first product and launch Shreds with Solana in mind. But there's all sorts of different applications for this, from centralized exchange data feeds to all different types of systems. So it's pretty exciting to launch. Like, you can think of this as we're launching a product today, which are Solana Shreds delivered over multicast, and that's DoubleZero Edge. But we also launched sort of a new foundational technology for all different types of products and services in the future. And it's not a closed ecosystem either. If folks are listening and they have a data set that they want to distribute via multicast for subscribers all around the world, we can work with all different types of data feeds as well.
Maybe to chime in, so I heard now, I think twice, that you're going to pick up the Shreds from Gossip, but I almost want you to be more ambitious, right? So I guess like if somebody's producing the Shreds and you have a lot of stake already in the Solana network, I guess these guys will immediately send the Shreds into the network,
yes,
right?
That's a good point of clarification. So we are actually sourcing the Shreds directly from the leader. And so if a validator is connected to DoubleZero and they opt in to publishing those Shreds directly, so the same time the data goes out via Turbine and Gossip, it goes out via the DoubleZero network as well. And so today we have coverage of, I think it's about 45% as of today, of leaders on Solana that are transmitting data into this multicast group. And so what that means is if you're a subscriber to DoubleZero Edge, 45% of the time when the block is being built, you're receiving it directly from the leader delivered over multicast, which is pretty exciting. And as the percentage of stake on DoubleZero goes up and the percentage of folks transmitting into the multicast group goes up, that number will only increase. And we should also mention, I don't know if we've talked about this yet, but validators get paid for this too. The way this works is a rev share model. And so validators are paid proportional to the Shreds they contribute. And, if there's $1 of revenue in an epoch, that's split among all the participants. If there's $1 million of revenue in an epoch, that's also split among the participants. And so validators get to share in the upside of this. And as trading on Solana becomes more competitive and more desirable, and all the work that everyone's doing to make it the best place to trade, the Shreds continue to get more valuable. And so that's kind of the long-term vision here. Is it is a new revenue stream for validators, the same way that when Jito launched, tips became an entirely new revenue stream.
Yeah, Brian, as a long-time operator, what do you think this new revenue stream means for validators? I know it's been pretty tough in recent years, but this new opportunity to kind of monetize your data, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, from a validator's point of view, any extra income stream above zero is most welcome at the moment, like anything. And in my mind, the biggest benefit of the way that you've constructed Edge with the revenue sharing is that you've changed the model from a validator's point of view. So instead of a validator having to pay to connect to DoubleZero, which is, outbound cash, which is always bad for a validator. Again, even $1 is too much. To even just some positive number for connecting and participating. So it's that fundamental shift in the business model that I think is huge and really changes the game for DoubleZero and then for the validators as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and validators will earn not immediately, but after about 10 epochs alongside our network contributors. So that's just kind of a good thing to note. We actually built an entire multicast dashboard that shows kind of how multicast works and kind of where the Shreds are going in real time. And so we did tweet about this earlier, but if you want to go find that, it's just malbeclabs.com/ where is this actually? Oh, it's there's malbeclabs.com/scoreboard. And then there's also the multicast dashboard as well. I want to kind of pull a thread there, Brian, on kind of the revenue for validators and kind of like how they actually earn. So what is the process for revenue actually being distributed?
In general, so you're thinking
for Tom, sorry.
Oh, Tom, not me. Okay.
Sure. So I could say like before DoubleZero and after, right? So Solana validators connect, they go get stake, whether it's their own or whether it's from delegates, and then they begin validating blocks. There are 3 revenue components prior to DoubleZero. The first is priority fees. The second is MEV tips. And the third is inflationary rewards, which come from the blockchain itself. So when we think about shreds historically, if you were a validator that had a large amount of stake weight, your shreds became appealing to a market participant. So think of these almost as puzzle pieces, right? If you are a trading firm or a market participant, your goal is to try to understand as much of what's happening out there. And in a world without DoubleZero Edge, your mission is to find the largest puzzle pieces and begin consuming their shreds in an effort to fill in the picture of what is transacting on the market. So there was a, call it shred economy, but it was effectively closed off, right? There was a very high watermark to hit as a validator for when your validator's emissions, shreds, started becoming valuable. Through Edge, really what we're saying to validators is agnostic of your size. The collective publishing of shreds from any validator helps to put those puzzle pieces together for market participants. Well, those participants, mainly trading firms, are going to pay for that access. And to Austin's point earlier, we will share that revenue with validators. A portion goes to validators, a portion goes to contributors, a portion goes to the validator clients that are developing what the software these validators run. So the way to think about this is effectively, a new revenue stream for the data your validator is producing. This opens up pretty interesting revenue opportunity, whereas before, like if you didn't have a very large validator, nobody was really interested in purchasing your shreds. I don't mean that in a mean way. I'm just being practical from an economic sense. Whereas now every validator can, and I hope they will, begin publishing their shreds into DoubleZero Edge because we have wide coverage and super, super fast delivery.
Yeah, it's kind of a win-win. Like it's free to operate on DoubleZero and you're getting paid for publishing your shreds that you already produce. So yeah.
I was just going to say, adding on to that, I do think it's pretty cool that you guys are sharing some of the proceeds with the client software developer teams. And so you're supporting the open source work that is supporting the blockchain. That's pretty awesome. So definitely thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of pulling a thread on like how a validator, connects to DoubleZero or multicast. It's very easy. You just go to our website and then multicast connect, and it's pretty much just one CLI command and then one configuration flag and one restart to connect. So the process is very easy, and you can join today and start earning. So just wanted to flag that. As Austin mentioned earlier, adoption has been really great so far. In the last month or so since we kind of announced this new opportunity, we already have 45% of Solana stake publishing their shreds. Obviously, the network only gets stronger with more validators connecting. So yeah, we'll share some resources on how to do that later on. But I want to kind of move over to the trader aspect too, and kind of, what are the steps for a trader if they wanted to subscribe to receiving Solana shreds? What does that process look like, and like how easy is it for someone to set up if they have their kind of own trading infrastructure already? I don't know, Andrew, if you want to speak to this, or maybe Austin.
Yeah, sure. So as part of the DoubleZero client software, we expose a CLI interface that traders can use to see the price of the seats. A seed is basically a position, a connection to a DoubleZero device. So you're going to want to look first to find the DoubleZero device that's closest to your computer to minimize the latency between your computer and the DoubleZero network. And then you effectively need a wallet with USDC, and through the command line interface, you buy the seat. And the moment that you buy the seat, our on-chain components sort of understand that that's happened and begin the process of priming the device that you're connecting to, and the client sets up a tunnel to between your computer and the DoubleZero device, and turns the faucet on, so to speak, of the multicast feed. And so now the shreds start arriving sort of instantaneously, like within seconds after you've posted, and bought the seat, then you're activated and online. The packets are encapsulated in GRE. This is the tunneling protocol that we use. So from a trader's perspective, one of the things they need to decide is if they're plumbing this into an existing bot framework that's using acceleration technologies like XDP, they need to handle those extra headers that we're putting on, and we have some reference designs that are available for that. Or if you're using standard kernel networking, the kernel just takes care of that happily for you. But other than that, it just looks like a feed of shreds. So they all arrive on the same UDP destination port, and you'll start to see on your tunneled interface, which is called 001 on the computer. If you TCP dump on that interface, you'll start to see the shreds sort of immediately, and then you can ingest them and plumb them through to whatever your normal way of ingesting shreds is.
Is there a limit to like how many seats a trader could subscribe or buy? Sorry.
You can have one connection from one computer to one seat at the moment. So basically, if you have a trading box in Frankfurt and you want to connect to DoubleZero, you pick one of the many DoubleZero devices in Frankfurt, whatever one is closest to you, and then you buy that seat. If you need another seat in Frankfurt, you need another computer in Frankfurt, and we're working to add multi-tunnel support into the future. But for now, this is the way to get your shreds as quickly as possible.
How does the performance look like so far early on? Like we obviously set up this scoreboard. And so I kind of want to just pull that thread and kind of discuss, we're talking about the fastest shreds being available. What does that performance kind of look like in the this kind of early phase?
Yeah, I think the easiest headline performance number to understand is that when a DoubleZero connected validator is sending a multicast shred into DoubleZero, from the vantage point of Amsterdam, Frankfurt, London, New York, Singapore, Tokyo, which are the sort of mainstay like trading areas, on average it wins 90% of the time. So that's just a function of, if you look at the other shred markets that are available. First, of course, you have Turbine, and depending on the stake weight of your computer on the Turbine tree, if you're in the top 200, you might be getting the shreds pretty quickly, but you're still not going to beat a multicast scenario that's not going through multiple computers. And then there's other, shred stream services that are available, and the same sort of story holds true. There's multiple computers that are in the way of delivering these shreds. And in the case of DoubleZero, the reason why you can achieve such a high win rate is because there are no computers in the way. It's straight from the validator who's building the block, who's producing the shred, directly through the infrastructure, through specialized switching ASICs only are the things that are handling the replication of the data. That's what makes it so fast. It's basically switching hardware is always going to win against any sort of CPU in the way.
Yeah, so the core difference is really just like a more direct path, pretty much.
That's right.
Awesome. Yeah, Austin actually grabbed the perfect domain name for the website too, which is fastshreds.com. So if you're looking to learn more about Edge, you can navigate there. We have obviously many ecosystem teams contributing to the launch, contributing to the publisher network. One of those is obviously Triton. So Brian, I just wanted to say thank you for supporting this type of new infrastructure, and also just kind of ask you like why and what's your interest in kind of seeing these new types of acceleration technologies coming to blockchain. I know we touched on it a bit earlier, but just kind of want to know like your personal perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has to do with the evolution of blockchains, right? So we're entering a new world now, especially when we start to talk about Solana serving internet capital markets and TradFi coming on board. And they're expecting an experience that's very similar to what they would have, whether it's with centralized exchanges or peer-to-peer connections, things like that. And so, yeah, we have to do these things to keep up. And at Triton, most of our business is traders. So where absolutely milliseconds matter to them. It matters on the receiving end. So when you're ingesting data from the blockchain, it also matters too when we're sending. And so transaction delivery and getting to the leader as fast as we possibly can, especially in the case of arbitrage, right? Because arbs tend to be a winner takes all environment. And 1 or 2 milliseconds can be all the difference. And even now for us at Triton, we're starting to measure differences in microseconds between us and even other providers. When we're looking at DoubleZero, we're also measuring down at that level. And that's kind of where TradFi is, right? Maybe they're measuring in nanoseconds. I don't know if we'll ever get a blockchain at that level, but the fact, I mean, literally the fact that we're talking about measuring things in microseconds on a blockchain, that's pretty cool. And so that'll be too, on talking about transaction delivery, that's a topic we can jump into at some point here, but there's also a pretty big role for DoubleZero to play there as well. But at Triton anyway, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this as being a part of the natural evolution of the blockchain and where we're going.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting to be talking about microseconds in a blockchain world. It's really not something that we've been doing previously on like at scale. And so, yeah, I think like I just kind of have a general thought question that like maybe the audience might be wondering too. DoubleZero's whole strategy, right, is to kind of bring technologies that have been proven out in institutional trading environments and kind of replicate those for on-chain markets. So the question kind of becomes like, what is or is there an equivalent to DoubleZero Edge in the financial world? Or is this kind of like its own unique innovation just because of the permissionless aspect? Andrew, maybe this is a better question for you.
Sure. I mean, multicast has been used for a long time in finance in general, and I think really, if you think about the evolution of how electronic markets worked, there was a time when if you were an electronic trader connecting to a centralized TradFi exchange, you opened up a TCP connection running the FIX protocol, and you asked for the latest pricing information over that session. It was in the U.S. equities market, specifically the ECNs, like Island ECN and Archipelago, which were later acquired by NASDAQ and NYSE. They're the ones who really innovated around building out colocation infrastructure and making a multicast distribution platform. And instead of putting the burden of all the replication of the data onto computers, like to a single computer to do this fan out, which is analogous to the way that many of these blockchains are working through their gossip protocols, they understood that if we can multicast the data and leverage these high-speed switching ASICs, that we're going to create a better marketplace. And then when we have information that's shared more or less at the same moment in time, it's always serialized. There's always a little bit of skew there, but like in general, it's a much better distribution rail for this one-to-many communication primitive. They were the ones who innovated and realized that, okay, this is a good way to do it. So the closest analog to this is all of the colocation networks that exist in in TradFi today, right? People try to position their computers as close to the matching engines as they can. The problem with a system like Solana is those, as Tom mentioned, the trading floor, the matching engine, it moves every 2 seconds. And so in order to replicate that same experience, you need to bring that multicast edge, the multicast footprint out to all the edges of the world in order to cope with that and use the same underpinning technology. And of course, there are extranets out there that exist in traditional finance, right? There's many of them that have come up, but again, they're centralized. They're centralized systems, and so I think that's the unique part about what DoubleZero Edge delivers.
Yeah, 100% would agree. And I think like most people would be curious to know kind of like the permissionless component here too. I don't know if you or Tom want to speak to that a little bit more in terms of like the DZ ledger and all the blockchain components that kind of differentiate this from existing systems already.
Go for it, Tom.
I think maybe Austin.
Real pass around on this one. Okay, so where are we with this question?
So this is basically just a follow on about the permissionless component of DZ Edge and kind of where the DZ ledger comes into play and all the blockchain components.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that we built this system on blockchain, and it's not for ideological alignment. It's because it's one of the most perfect systems of accounting and database creation for verifiability anyone's ever created. And so by having this thing be powered by a blockchain under the hood, it means that there's no disputes on, oh, did Brian get what he was owed or did he get too little, right? He can verify that like the protocol is not shortchanging his customers and his nodes. And that's kind of the whole power of this thing. And it also means that there's no chargebacks. There's no issues with, oh, did someone not pay? And are they going to dispute this charge now or something along those lines? And so the protocol can operate on a sort of just-in-time payment method where you don't need to pre-fund 12 months of connectivity. You can pay epoch by epoch if you want, and you can fund it, a minute before the next epoch kicks in and these sorts of things. And so that's really one of like the core use cases of blockchain technology, not necessarily crypto, not necessarily even Solana, but is reducing counterparty risk and increasing verifiability of the data. And so that's kind of a big component of this for us. This also means that we can do all other sorts of things because if the data set we're reading from is also permissionless, is also on a blockchain, well, suddenly we don't need to go ask Roger and call him up and say, hey, can you give me the addresses of all of the Solana validators? We can just read it from gossip. And so this thing really compounds over time. And so we think there's going to be a lot more of these types of applications in the future where we are able to use the permissionless nature to say like right now, if you think about it, like there's only really one person in the history of crypto that's managed to get a bunch of traders and degens to KYC, and that's Kobe for Echo. And so, when you're trying to build a product and you're trying to reach a whole wide range of people from prop trading firms and, high frequency trading firms to two guys who are maybe trading a book of $50,000, but they've got some edge and they're smart and they've got this like strategy they're running. We need to be able to have something that can interface all across that spectrum. And that's what permissionless networks enable you to do on the user perspective. And the fact that you can sign up for DoubleZero Edge and never talk to us, never tell you who you are, like that's actually a feature, not a bug in the system.
I think I would add that as an infrastructure builder in traditional finance for a very long time, that it takes a mind-numbingly long amount of time to provision a cross connect between your computers and the exchange or to an extranet provider, right? And what the on-chain primitives have done is allowed us to express everything in smart contracts and you basically cut out all of this friction that exists. If you decide at midnight that like tonight that you just want to start trading on Solana and you need to get shreds, right? You don't want to go through a 2-week cross connect cycle to get a fiber run between your computer and whatever hosting provider you need to, right? You don't want to do that. You want to just like get your shreds and get going on your on your idea. That's more true today than it ever was with the advent of AI and LLMs, and how quick you can spin up a prototype of something. So we've just unlocked a way for you to bypass an entire business cycle here to your tunnel to DoubleZero is your cross connect, and you can just pay for that right now and get it right now. And I think that is a beautiful simplification of what has been a historically difficult thing to do in traditional finance.
Maybe I can add to this. So I mean, we fundamentally want a worldwide trading system as well, right? We don't want something which just is hosted in one city. Now we're going to change the market structure of Solana eventually, right? You heard these recent talks about MCP and whatnot. And one of the things we could do there is actually we could have multiple trading centers, sort of like others have just one trading center, but we could support different regions in the world as trading centers, and they would still have to talk to each other, right? In some sense. So for that we need this worldwide fast routing. But of course there is a bit of an advantage of just being centralized basically in one location. The disadvantage, there's many disadvantages as well. One which wasn't mentioned was just fault tolerance, right? So if you're in one location, in one jurisdiction, things can happen, right? And if you're worldwide, you're much more fault tolerant that way.
Yeah, I want to take a moment to just say that Austin is at midnight in Korea right now and just gave a 2-minute perfect monologue on blockchain permissionlessness. So well done. Thank you for that. Yeah, so I think, we've covered a lot here today. DoubleZero Edge is live permissionlessly. You can connect now. Multicast in a permissionless way, or an open way, rather, is also available. So a lot of exciting innovations coming to Solana, coming on chain, to blockchain, all powered by this distributed network. So yeah, thanks everyone for your time. I don't know if anyone has just kind of any closing final thoughts that they wanted to convey.
Hey, Eden.
Hey, Brian.
I can't wait until tomorrow.
Yeah?
DoubleZero gets better every day.
Hell yeah, brother. It does, honestly. Yeah,
yep,
this is all verifiable, which the public internet doesn't have, by the way. Yeah, our data dashboard, I think, is an incredible tool. Like I said earlier, we'll link all these below. But yeah, I think number one rule for us is just transparency at every turn, which is not something you'll get from your traditional internet service provider. So
yep, yeah, and your team moves fast. I mean, awesome progress, and it really does get better every day. That's it's a great thing. So.
Appreciate that a lot, Brian. Tom, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll say none of this is possible without a distributed set of network contributors. Like the DoubleZero Foundation doesn't run these cables, right? The idea, when I was chatting with Austin now a year and change ago about joining DoubleZero, we were kind of joking. Like the idea of going to a trading firm and asking them to provide capacity alongside other large trading firms and crypto firms to create this super network to beat out the public internet for crypto seemed like an insane idea. Partially made possible because of the dynamics of the DoubleZero token, partially made possible because all of these contributors realized that the sum of their parts is greater. I forget how that expression goes, but just generally speaking, there are over a dozen contributors that provide these cables that are all collectively making Solana go faster, and they deserve a lot of credit.
Absolutely. Yeah, important shout. And the beautiful thing about that is it's limitless, right? So we have 14 contributors now, but that number could continue to grow and will continue to grow over time. And there's no limit on how many contributors we can have and how much bandwidth this network can have as well. So IBRL, I guess, is the best way to express that. Cool. If there's no other thoughts, we can wrap here. I just want to thank you guys again for taking the time. I know you're all very busy people, so even just stealing your time for an hour is extremely appreciated. And we will share some links where you can find information about multicast, about DoubleZero, about the project after this. And